Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you all very much for joining the weekly Iskcon Niagara Saturday program. On behalf of the directors, council members, I would like to, this Sachidanandas, a servant of Iskcon Niagara, would like to welcome all of you on this wonderful, beautiful spring day. And we are looking forward to His Holiness Bhaktimaraga Swami's association through his lecture. So before his lecture begins, we will be having an opening kirtan with a Vaishnava bhajan included in it, followed by Maharaj's class. And then there will be a question answer session where everybody will be allowed to unmute and ask Maharaj anything they wish to, and in particular about today's topic that he has spoken, that he will be speaking on. So I again welcome all of you. Hare Krishna. So I will just start with the opening kirtan, some invocation, and we're looking forward to a wonderful evening, surcharged with Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Vancha Kalpatarobhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Pankit Prabhu, bhajan please. So today we will be singing a wonderful Vaishnava bhajan composed by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Mama Mana Mandire, inviting Krishna into the heart and performing his worship with a lot of love. Mama Mana Mandire Raho Nishidine Krishna Murari Sri Krishna Murari. Mama Mana Mandire Raho Nishidine Mama Mana Mandire Raho Nishidine Shri Krishna Murari Shri Krishna Murari Krishna Murari Shri Krishna Murari Bhakti Priti Mala Chandan Bhakti Priti Mala Chandan Tumi Niho He Niho Chittanandana Tumi Niho He Niho Chittanandana Krishna Murari Shri Krishna Murari Jivane Marana Tava Puja Nivedana Jivana Marana Tava Puja Nivedana Sundar He Manhari Sundar He Manhari Krishna Murari Sri Krishna Murari Esho Nanda Kumar Nanda Kumar Esho Nanda Kumar Nanda Kumar Habe prema pradipe arati tomar Habe prema pradipe arati tomar Krishna Murari Shri Krishna Murari নয়নে যমুনা ঝরে আনিবার নয়নে যমুনা ঝরে আনিবার তোমারা বিরহে গিরিধারী তো Shri Krishna Murari. वंदन गौणे तव बाजुक जीवन, वंदन गौणे तव बाजुक जीवन, कृष्ण मुरारी, कृष्ण मुरारी, श्री कृष्ण मुरारी, श्री कृष्ण मुरारी, श्री कृष्ण मुरारी। मम मन मंदिरे रहो निशिदीना, मम मन मंदिरे रहो निशिदीना, कृष्ण मुरारी, श्री कृष्ण मुरारी। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम राम, राम राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम राम, राम राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। श्री कृष्ण मुरारी, श्री कृष्ण मुरारी। जय जय गोपाल जय जय राधा रमण हरि गोविंद जय जय राधा रमण हरि गोविंद जय जय गोविंद जय जय गोपाल जय जय राधा रमण हरि गोविंद जय जय हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल निताई गौर हरि बोल निताई गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल निताई गौरा हरि हरि बोल जय राधा मदन मोहन राधा मदन मोहन राधे राधे जय राधा गोपीनाथ राधा गोपीनाथ राधे राधे हो जयो राधा गोविंद राधा गोविंद राधे राधे जय कृष्ण बलराम जय वृंदावन धाम जय ललिता विशाखा राधे श्याम जय गौरानिताय जय गौरानिताय जय गौरानिताय जय गौरानिताय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव जय जय गुरुदेव जय जय गुरुदेव गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. So today we have a very special program. We have our own His Holiness Bhaktimaraga Swami. He will be enlightening us with the topic known as mindfulness versus mindlessness. Bhaktimaraga Swami really doesn't need an introduction, but it would benefit some of the participants who are perhaps attending for the first time. Bhaktimaraga Swami, born in Chatham, Ontario, Canada, is also known as the walking monk. He's very famous for him having trekked 4 times across Canada. And keeping in that spirit of pilgrimage along the way, preaching Krishna consciousness, he has also crossed the US, Israel, Ireland, Guyana, Trinidad, Mauritius, and the Fiji Islands. So indeed, the name Walking Monk certainly befits Maharaj for his wonderful preaching activities just by walking and spreading Krishna consciousness to whoever comes along his way. It is the instruction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Jare dekho tare kaho Krishna updesh. Whenever there's an opportunity, one should preach this message of Krishna consciousness. So even in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that one who preaches this message of Krishna consciousness of Bhagavad Gita is very dear to me. Neither in the past, nor in the future, nor in the present, any devotee will be more dear. So thank you, Maharaj, for your preaching activities. He's also, Maharaj has he has definitely spoken on many wide subject matters and in Krishna consciousness. And as a youth, Swami Ji or Maharaj was a student of the fine arts. But he took to this life of a Hare Krishna monk, first as a brahmachari and then as a sannyasi, at a very young age, at the age of 20 years, back in 1973, when the Hare Krishna explosion was happening all over the world. And although pursuing monastic ways, he maintains an artistic expression. An artistic expression in bringing in the art through poems, through dramas, through morality theater, which takes him around the globe as a playwright and a director. An opportunity to work with talented youth in various communities. And he's also, of course, an instructor in Bhakti Yoga, or what we commonly call as Krishna consciousness in the movement of Srila Prabhupada. So he's a leader of musical mantra meditation called Kirtan, and a speaker on the science of the self-based or the ancient teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. Presently, Maharaj is the governing body commissioner of Iskcon, Canada, GBC, well known as. He's also a trustee in many temples in the Canadian region, including the Toronto Temple and Niagara also, the Niagara Iskcon. He's a director and an initiating spiritual master. So without further ado, I would like to invite Maharaj to enlighten us on today's subject matter, mindfulness versus mindlessness. Maharaj, would you please kindly unmute your microphone?
Thank you very much. I assume you can all hear me.
Maharaj, loud and clear.
Beautiful. Thank you, Satchidanand Prabhu. Sounds like you gave me a lot of posts or titles, but ultimately we're just a tiny little spiritual spark of life, a servant of God. Thank you. I would just like to open up with a poem that I wrote about the mind, and it's addressing the mind directly. And then I will definitely from there spring off to talk about other things, and I definitely quote from the Gita and so on like that. Okay, so here it is. Dear mind, some days you are friend, some days you are foe. You swing moods up, you swing them low. I can't always trust. You're not in one place. You respond well to lust, big dose or trace. You lead me to greed. It's not what I want. And convince it's a need. In truth, it's a taunt. When there is anger pent up inside, you then do hanker to push it outside. I don't know why you are so cruel, cunning and sly, and wanting to rule. You're some kind of clown, silly and joking, a laugh or a frown, nabbing and poking. Yet you are subtle, silent, and swift, keen to befuddle on your full-time shift. You are at your worst when the body is idle. Every bubble you burst to retain your title. But my dear mind, I'm not your slave. I'll reverse the role, get you to behave, get you under control. It's my turn to reign. So settle down, sit. There's magic in the name. It's the perfect fit. The art to cooperate can take out your sting. So let us celebrate by mantra we sing. And this is addressed from your former foe or enemy, now a friend. Okay, thank you. Mindfulness. This is a term which has become very popular as of late, especially amongst people in the yoga circles. Um, Mindfulness refers to the mind. If we can identify that, a lot of people will say it's part of the brain, the functioning of the brain. The Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's own word, refers to it as one of the sixth senses, the sixth one, in fact. I don't know if anyone's seen the movie The Sixth Sense. It was a blockbuster, and I happened to meet the the writer and the director of that movie. He's a young guy, and he was 20 years old when he did his first feature film. That's when I met him. Humble guy, South Indian chap who was raised in Philadelphia, as far as I understand. He's a Hitchcockian follower of Alfred Hitchcock. You can tell by his film. Anyways, Sixth Sense. What that film was about, it was about entering into another dimension. It was really about ghosts and things like that. Something that some people scoff at. They don't say, I don't really believe it. I don't see it, so I don't believe it. But then there are other people say, I've seen ghosts, I've felt them, and so on. The mind is a little bit like that. It's the subtle sense, sometimes referred to as the center of the senses, because many thoughts and desires and feelings and pains and pleasures, attitudes filter through the mind. And the mind, however, cannot be trusted. Anyways, when we talk about mindfulness, we're talking about having it full of positivity, um, optimism. A lot of people feel that to, for there to be mindfulness, you have to empty your mind, but that's a very impossible thing to do. Mindfulness means to fill up, just like you fill up your cup with, some berry juice or something, like some strawberries, some blackberries, blueberries. You mix it all up and you have a really nice drink. And so the mind is like a subtle vessel that we attempt to fill it up with positive thoughts and of a spiritual nature. There's a phrase in the Bhagavad Gita called nirmana, which means to be. Nir means not, and mana refers to being full of ego or prestige or pride, which is where the mind likes to gravitates towards those things. The mind and the ego they're like good friends. They just hang out with each other, And this leads us to the phrase, mindlessness. When you do something mindless, it means you don't have much real thought behind it. It's very short term result. When you have an idea where you can satisfy your senses, and you think it'll bring you some satisfaction if you actually make the contact with the sense and the sense object coming together, rubbing together perhaps even, then you feel that if I anticipate this pleasure and I will fulfill it and I will be fulfilled. But that is just short term planning. Really, ultimate planning means to look at things long term. And whatever I endeavor to do in this world, I should do it with the insightfulness that I'm going to get ultimate benefit, not immediate benefit, but ultimate benefit. And we should never trust anything that is somewhat tempting for the moment, because that usually is like the example is given in Bhagavad Gita, that which in the beginning is like nectar or is like having a fantastic drink, but in the end turns into poison, should not be trusted. So the mind is like that. It's all over the place. It's like a monkey. It's like a cloud. And what we want to strive for is mindfulness. So, in the Bhakti tradition, the tradition of the Bhagavad Gita, our purpose is to fill our mind with thoughts of the absolute, of what is divine, thoughts of Krishna more particularly. And therefore, the conclusion of the Gita is found in the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which does address the mind. Manmana Bhava Bhakto. Have your thoughts on me. Have your thoughts on God or the Creator, whatever you wish to call him. You know, is there information about God? Yes, there's lots, plenty, plenty. Especially if we look in texts like the Bhagavat Purana, or also known as Srimad Bhagavatam, the Mahabharata. Krishna's stories are told there, especially where he's dealing with his, you know, friends and family and so on, and also foes, enemies. A lot of information is there for sure. So to be mindful and to fill up the mind with positive things, it's addressed in chapter 18, text 65 and 66 also. Hints at what we should be doing with ourselves, uh, engaging in full submission, um, just having positive thoughts all the time. And then Krishna says, I'll remove all negativity. So the idea is it's a little bit like a computer. It has some memory, and it tends to, sometimes you see things, maybe things pop up that maybe you don't want. And that's my experience with my phone. I said, how did that happen? I don't even want, I have no interest in these images. And then what you have to do is just fill up your device with positive things. Or let's give an example. Srila Prabhupada was talking about, milk. It's the purest food that you can find, especially if it's ahimsa milk. It's not connected to the uh, cow slaughter industry, but really nice, rich butter fat milk. Let's say if you have enough of that, um, there will be no room for even a drop of black ink to fit in. That if you put a drop of black ink into that pure substance, it will spill over. So this is the idea about mindfulness. It's just to bring you to the point of full, like, surrender, sweet surrender to Krishna. So there's a saying out there that do not be loyal to the mind, because the mind will never be loyal to you. It will switch its allegiances. It will switch its loyalty. You might think you have a friend there, but in the end you won't. So the mind is either your best friend or it's your worst enemy. It's your best friend when you have it under control. And I'm going to actually quote from a few places in Bhagavad Gita where we do hear a little bit more about the nature of the mind. Chapter 6 is called Dhyana Yoga. That means meditative yoga. It makes use of the mind. And, when you're taking to the spiritual path, you cannot deny the fact that you have to use all the faculty measures. You have to use your whole body, in some kind of service. Popular yoga will have it that you have to have engaged in certain sitting postures and engage in breathing techniques, asanas, which is sitting postures, pranayama, which is breathing techniques. And in this way, you can benefit. And indeed, there is some help that comes from that. But ultimately, you want the mind to be filled with those very positive things that we discussed a little earlier on. The nature of the mind is to be restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong, O Krishna. And to subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the wind. Chanchalam himana Krishna pramati balavadritam sasyaham nigraham mani vayur ivasa dushkaram. So vayu refers to the wind. The wind is ever moving, like yesterday, at least here in the Toronto zone, I'm sure probably in the Niagara area as well. The trees were dancing, at least their upper parts. If it wasn't for their roots in the ground, they would probably be tossed out. I just came from the park, and there was a father and his son picking up the branches that, sort of the dead branches that fell off the trees from yesterday. What for? I don't know. Maybe for their fireplace. It's a very honorable thing they were doing, you know. But I was watching the trees, and they were just moving like crazy. And there was a high velocity wind at one point. So our mind is like that. It moves at high speed. It goes in all directions, all kinds of currents, and it does have its purpose. But if we want the mind to become our friend, then we have to have it under control. And Krishna's dear friend Arjuna said that it's easier to control the wind than the mind. And it's a fact. If you build up a wall, with like stone and mortar and stone and mortar and so on like that, and you build up a wall, and the wind happens to be coming one way, then you'll feel very, very sheltered. Now, let's say, and the nature of the wind is to come from the other direction. So you go to the other side of the wall. The wind is so strong, however, that it doesn't matter which side of the wall you're on. The wind will get you both ways. And therefore, we have something called a house. And a house is with four walls. And sometimes the wind is so strong, even those four walls won't be able to give you the protection that you need. Anybody been to Florida before? Hurricane season? Well, some buildings don't make it. So it's understood that the mind has this restless tendency, and that's what makes it kind of difficult. We also have to look and see where the mind sits in terms of our own construct. So Krishna says in the third chapter of the Gita, Indriyani paranyahur indriyebhya paran manaha manasastu parabudhir yobude paratastu saha. So Krishna is talking about how we are made up of this body, which has sense organs, and it has knowledge acquiring senses, working active senses. And then, but above that, superior to it by nature, is the mind, the mana, which is more subtle, something we don't always see. More subtle than the mind is the intelligence. The intelligence and the mind can be cohesive, but oftentimes they're not. They fight with each other. The mind likes short-term stimulation. The intelligence is more favoring long-term stimulation. For instance, I'll work hard now. I'll like say, let's give the example of the house. Let's start in the month of May when the weather's okay. Let's build our house now. So by the time it's October, we'll have it good and done. And I work at it really hard. So you plan it out. Don't start building your house in September. It won't be ready before the snow flies, you know. So the idea is plan. And the intelligence likes planning as opposed to the mind, which doesn't plan. So no. I need immediate stimuli. I need it right now because I have to gratify my senses. But we have to really remove ourselves from the senses. The other day, I met a very nice young woman in a park near Davisville here in Toronto. And I was just sitting at a park bench, and she came over to me and said, "Excuse me, but are you a monk?" I said, "Well, yes, I am. I have some spiritual questions. Do you mind if I ask them?" And so I said, "Yes, that's fine." And her questions were driven from a very sincere spot. And I really appreciated her asking them. Not everybody's shy. A lot of people never even bother probing into the spirit, soul, or self-realization. But here was a young woman who was really keen, and I felt, hey, this is what that's what I'm here for. I'm here in these robes so people can recognize me and maybe we can have a spiritual chat, you know. So she was going through some uh, turbulence, I would say. Nothing too gripping. Just she just wanted to know a little bit about, was it okay to even think spiritual? And I said, absolutely. That's the great boon of being in a human body. That is our human right. And that is also our human might. That's what we have over all the other forms of life. So I was just telling her, first of all, let's get our identity right. Most people don't even think about that. What's my identity? And we live in the pop culture. And in the pop culture, we're totally encouraged to think about that you're the body. And it's the furthest thing from the truth. The body is that house idea again. It's a house, but the house is only important so long as you're in it and you're making use of it. You know? What's the point in having a house that's empty? You know, so what's the point in having a body, a physical body, unless if you use it for what it's meant for? And as a human being, we have an obligation to cultivate our spiritual side. So I was just letting her know, going a little more deeper with it. Well, the body's a machine, but we are not a machine. That would be an insult to declare I'm a machine. Somebody told me, by the way, last time when I walked across the U.S., my Suporga said, "You're a machine, Maharaj. You're a machine." I said, "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, you just get up in the morning early and you just go like a machine. And you do that every day. We don't have any breaks." I said, "Well, anyways, okay, at least I'm regulated or steady at something." So, but I took a little offense to it that I'm just a machine. Yeah, that's all I am. I'm just a generator or whatever. So the point is that the machine also has no significance unless if there's a superior energy within activating it, you know, giving it life. So I was telling this young woman that we are not the body. We're also not the mind. And we're not even this intelligence. You can separate these things from ourselves, but we are the spirit within. We are that life force that never has a beginning and it never has an end, and it continues to go on. But by the grace of God or the universe, however you like to put it, we're given different bodies, a new body after the older one is shed, so that we have another opportunity, a second chance perhaps, to do better. And if we don't hit the objective of life, which is to become mindful in this life, then it just might come across that it could dawn upon us that, hey, maybe this is what I should be doing. at least get a balance in my life to cultivate my spiritual side. So it was 2 weeks ago, I was on a panel discussion with a group of um, religious leaders coming from different backgrounds, and I was talking about this idea of identity, and which was kind of like new to the ears of some of the leaders, that to identify with the soul, the spirit, and um, and that we have another chance, perhaps, to make good if we don't make the grade in this life. Yeah. So it's guaranteed that if you just follow the dictates of the mind, it will take you to the lower regions of existence. It will take you to the gutter, to the sewer. On the other hand, if your mind is tamed and you've got it under control somewhat, or at least if you attempt to, eventually you'll gravitate to more heavenly thoughts, thoughts of, good thoughts about people. Like some of us will admit that when I see someone, I judge them very quickly, and I'll judge them by their looks, and I'll think negative about them. Oh, that's what kind of jumps out first. Okay, this person's got a big nose, or this person's got, I don't like their clothes, I don't like their colors, or I don't like that accent, or we make judgments very quickly. But on the other hand, we can take sort of the opposite spin to it and say, well, here's a human being, and in a actually here's a spirit soul, uh, embodied, and here's someone who's me. It's all about love. It's all about prema, but there's coverings and layers of conditioning which may not allow all that to come through. But I'm going to try to see the spirit behind that person. I'm going to try to capture the love. And that's what Bhakti Yoga is really all about. The ultimate book on how to deal with the mind and how to tame it, you know. And the idea is not to empty it out, because as I mentioned earlier, the mind is not a vacuum cleaner. You know, even a vacuum cleaner, there's air inside, there's space, and there's some dust particles, and maybe even COVID virus. You never know. So there's always something everywhere. So you cannot empty the mind. It's impossible. If you try to think about, because when you're thinking, that is the function of the mind, to think, right? So if you're trying to do, say, like yoga, exercise yoga, get your sitting posture right, you've done your asana and so on like that, and try to empty your mind. But then you have to think about not thinking. So there's no way that you can stop thinking. Thinking will always go on. That is basically a function of the mind. And when we can bring our thoughts more under the control and align it with our intelligence, again, for long-term satisfaction, then we can start to go places. Then there's some hope that I can actually reach the spiritual realm, which is where I belong. Right now we're fish out of water, and we're flapping around like when you take a fish out of water. I mean, I'll be honest with you, fish are gross in my books. They're just so gross. They're so stinky. Let them stay in the water. Anything that smells, put it back, go where it belongs. And so, um, where does our mind belong? It belongs in a holy place. Where does the intelligence belong? In a holy place. Where does this physical machinery, the body, belong? Also in a holy place. Where do you find a holy place? Where there's sangha, where there's people of the same spirit, of the same mentality. Everyone working together. And really, we were trying to say in the poem is that the mind can be relieved of its own sting uh, when you sing. And sing what? Well, oftentimes people sing because they're in a happy mood. Like when a lot of people like to sing in the shower because showering just makes you feel so good. It's so refreshing. You feel like it's like a reincarnation. You know? And the symptom of happiness oftentimes is singing, unless if you're singing the blues, that's another ball game. It's music in another genre. You know, before I joined the movement, before I became a monk, I used to listen to all kinds of genres of music, everything except country western. Anyways, in the, in the early '70s, country western music was kind of not. It was not bad, you know. It was not mixed with rock, you know. But when you put the two together, say that doesn't work. It's what we call rasa basa. So I was listening to blues, John Mayall, and other blues masters, and there was a certain tone and mood and spirit to their music. And then I met devotees, and they were looking at my albums, and I said, "Well, you know, John, that was my name then." And they said, "You know, if you just get into chanting, you don't have to listen to blues music anymore. You don't have to feel sad." You know, I said, "Okay." Well, I I didn't nod my head. I just listened, and I was thinking about their advice, and I kind of gave up on the blues music. I mean, I think some people do a fantastic job at it. So some jazz musicians are great, and I adore some of these people who can do such put out beautiful music and have the ability to change your moods. You know, swing you around. You know, because everyone with music you hit different emotional notes, and but ultimately everyone wants ananda, everyone wants happiness. So this is where kirtan comes into play. And um, and uh, if the mind has some kind of physical form, I would imagine that it's got a happy face in the midst of a kirtan when people are singing and dancing, which is something we can't do these days together because of COVID. But we'll get there again. We'll get there again. We will. We will. So I would just say that to achieve mindfulness, it's a matter of bringing us onto a spot, a place where we can have the most positive thoughts possible. I'll just cite from you. I'll take a passage from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 17, text 16. If you have a copy with you, this you'll find this very sweet. Okay. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada, our Guru Maharaj, explains the best course is to divert the mind to the Vedic literature. This is sort of midway through. The best course is to divert the mind to the Vedic literature, which is full of satisfying stories, as in the Puranas and the Mahabharata. One can take advantage of this knowledge and thus be purified. The mind should be devoid of duplicity, and one should think of the welfare of all. Okay, so those are some pointers. The nature of the mind is because of its chanchalam aspect, is to engage in sankalpa and vikalpa, means accept, reject, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. You know, always quite confused, and especially if one does not co- connect with the higher self, which is your spiritual intuition and your good God-given intelligence. So Krishna explains to Arjuna that you learn to control the lower self by the higher self. So we already talked about what is the lower self, talking about the senses, the body, the physical body, and then the mind. The higher upper level is the intelligence and the soul itself. So those are some pointers on how we can uh, uh, get to the point of mindfulness, and to fill it up with uh, the necessary uh, the necessaries of life, which is uh, the divine thoughts. And when we say someone is mindless, it means that well, you're just doing, you're like a cat that chases its tail and everything's going in a circle. You don't seem to be making any headway. So that seems to be the spin. And then the result of that is that there will be rebirth and rebirth again and again until you get it just right. And by the way, happy May Day, everybody. And the last, it was the second time I walked across Canada, and I met a lady on Mother's Day, and she was telling me that she and her husband pulled over and said, "We heard what you're doing. We think it's great, walking across the country for spiritual awareness." And I was touched by that. And she was saying, "Well, it's Mother's Day, and I was thinking about my mother, and she um, she led a pretty good full life, but she's certainly had to work out some things in her own existence that were not complete. So I believe that she's going to take birth again to, let's say, work on those areas, her shortcomings, so that she can kind of come out in her fullness. That's what I believe. What do you believe, Swami?" And I said, "Yes, that's exactly the system. That's exactly the karmic policy, that if we can't make it in this life, then we get another chance. And that is God's compassion. God is showing us that, if we just can't be fully purified, at one shot, He'll say, okay, here you have another chance, another opportunity. So that's God's love. So that's where we want to end up with, is having good good thoughts about people and good thoughts about the person who's making everything spin in this world. Um, think positive, and try to get away out of that zone where, oh, look at COVID. How could God allow this to happen? But really, God is just has given us a nice setup, and we mess it up all the time. If a man and woman who are, you know, are, we call them a couple, and they're enjoying smoothies out in the backyard, and and the kids are in the house, tearing each other's hair out, pulling them out, and making a big noise and a big ruckus and everything like that. And the parents are hearing this. They'll come inside and say, "Now you calm down. Stop this now." You know, it's not that the parents fired this. They didn't get the kids all wired up. The kids did it themselves. So we've been given a beautiful facility, this human body. We've been given a nice place in which to live and to work and to thrive and benefit. And we should think positive and not always put the blame on God for the mistakes we made. And if we go back to COVID, there are theories out there that COVID was started from the wet market, and other people say it came from the clean laboratory. It doesn't matter, you know. Someone has ill intention, and whether it's to be deliberately making a control over the population, or if it's just putting animals in cages and selling them, which is very much in the mode of ignorance and does not help a person to spiritually advance. And if you got an intent to eat those poor creatures, it's all mode of ignorance, and it's something that should not play a part in our life. So whatever is the origin, it's bad, but God has given us a choice. You don't have to be ill motivated. So this is where our panel discussion went the other day, a couple of weeks ago. So why is there war? Why is pestilence? Why is God allowing it to happen? Said, no, God didn't start those wars. They have a saying. I met one man. He's saying a war is started. Usually, this is an Irish saying. There's a beautiful butterfly, and he starts flapping his wings, and he flies. And from that little flapping, there's some agitation that's created in the atmosphere. And in the end, it starts to grow and fester, and it turns up being in a war. It all started with a little something, with a flapping of wings. So, we are the ones that create the war, and it's not otherwise. We're the ones that have the conflict because we think we are the mind, and because we think we are the body. So let's get it right. As Krishna's teaching Arjuna, you are not the body. Aham brahmasmi. I'm spirit. I'm not this body. So everything starts from that premise. So uh, I would like to leave some period for your questions, and we'll try to give some answers. If there's anything all out there that resonates with you,
Maharaj, please unmute. You got muted.
unmuted. So can you still hear me?
Yes.
Am I heard? Okay. So, people say common phrases to do with the mind. Mind your own business. Or we just say, mind you, which means become attentive. And sometimes I changed my mind. You know, I like this set of jeans. I was thinking about that set of jeans. Now I want to go. I gravitate to this. So this is how we use the mind. So maybe we can think about its more a progressive utility, and to say, why don't I saturate my mind with divine thoughts? Hare Krishna. Any questions?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Pranam always Prabhupada. Maharaj, thank you
Haribol.
so much for the wonderful class on mindfulness and mindlessness. So Maharaj, I have got a couple of questions. The first one, if you allow me to ask, is, Srila Prabhupada Maharaj often speaks of Shreyas and Preyas. So Shreyas and Preyas is nothing but the short-term goals and the long-term goals. What is the ultimate benefit for everyone? So Maharaj, my first question is, how does the mind play a role in these two facets of life, Shreyas and Preyas?
Well, Shreyas refers to when you engage in an activity which will give you long-term benefit, and it's when you've tapped more into the intelligence, and you ask the mind, behave now. I'm listening to my higher brain power. So prayas refers to more immediate result. And Prabhupada gives an example from a very lofty position. He's talking about Krishna is enjoying in the pasturing grounds, and he's playing with his friends, his gopas, and they're having a blast, right? But then it comes time where Mother Yashoda is calling, Krishna, come, you have to eat now. It's time to eat. You have to stop playing. You have to come and eat. You need your nourishment so you can be big and strong like your daddy, kind of thing, And so Krishna was, contemplating on this. He really didn't want to stop playing. He was having a good time. So this is an example of what we call prayas, short term, Whereas his mother, coming from a background of what's for the ultimate good of my child, is it's rests from what we call shreyas. Now, that is an example that Prabhupada gave, and we're talking about pureness. Even Krishna's playing is good. It's always good, and his avoiding playing is also good, because everything is spiritual. But I mean, if we can just transfer that to an example at home base, you tell your kids, come on, you got to stop playing right now. It's getting dark now. You're going to get cold, because the night air it's going to hit you, and you're not dressed for it, blah, 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 and so on like that. So the parent is thinking for the ultimate benefit. A child doesn't quite get it yet because there isn't that training with the mind. That the child is on a mental roll pretty much continually, and so the more experienced platform is where the parent is saying, no, 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 I've let you play, it's good enough now. Now it's time for you to get your nourishment. So I would just go back on what I was saying earlier, that the mind has to be harnessed. It needs to be tamed, and that is through the higher intelligence. And higher intelligence comes from education, comes from hearing from more experienced people, and your own experience, even your own experience, or a trust in sadhu, guru, shastra, trust in higher authorities, because they have what is stored inside of their wisdom is incredible experience. So let's go for the long term, and long term refers more to the use of intelligence as opposed to short term, which is the mind and the senses.
Thank you so much.
That's so that's one question. We took a lot of time. We can come back to you if anybody else has a question.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you.
Or a comment or anything like that. I see Surinder from Ottawa. Yahoo! Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Thank you.
I hope you are doing well and you are fully recovered.
Yes, I had mild symptoms of COVID, and thank God it's like that, and I'm over it. And I got my vaccine the other day, and it was just after I had my vaccine that I met that nice young woman in the park, and she asked all kinds of questions. So,
it was very nice. This mind thing will never-ending process, probably life after life, and I am still struggling to train the mind with the higher intelligence. So a few days ago, I was listening to one lecture, and there's a word in English called monkey. So monkey is a compounded word. If you take it, he parted it into two. So first is man, and the second part is ki. So man means mind, and then the speaker said that jo man ki sune wo monkey. So the one who listens to the mind is a monkey.
Right.
Like in Hindi, it was a Hindi lecture. So he said that jo man ki sune wo monkey means the one who listens to the mind is a monkey.
Right.
It was very funny the way he has interpreted the word monkey, and I was thinking it is really a monkey. Actually, the mind is monkey.
And anybody who's been to Vrindavan, they've seen the monkeys there, you can't trust them. They'll steal everything. And they jump from this branch to that branch, and they're kind of like all over the place, like the nature of the mind. Yeah, don't trust a monkey, and don't trust your mind. Thank you. Anybody else want to?
Kavita Mataji wants to ask a question. She has raised.
Sure. Kavita, do we see you? Are you hiding?
No, I have my video on.
Okay. I don't see. It's nice to talk to a person, especially during COVID.
Yes.
Oh, yes. You're right. You're on page 1.
Yeah, there's so many attendees today. I have 2 questions. If the time allows, I'll put
Why
up
don't
my
we
second
deal
question.
with your first one, then we'll go back to Pitambar, and then we'll go, okay. Unless if someone else comes in, okay?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. See, we were talking about mindfulness, mindlessness. It was really, really much needed topic. But I'm just thinking that we live in the world of artificial intelligence here, right? We are using computers, like lots of electronics, computers, our dependence on electronics and all. So what is exactly mindfulness? Like,
Well, to have your mind full of Krishna, basically, that's the ultimate objective. You know, to that Krishna is my Lord. He's my heart and soul, and allow him to lead me. And my purpose is to do everything for him to please him. He is known as Rishikesh, master of the senses. So instead of like now I'm trained to, I have to serve my senses. I have to, tantalize I have to pamper myself continually. Instead of that modus operandi, I should be thinking about what is it that's going to please Krishna the most, And in this purport that I was reading from 1716, Prabhupada is saying one of the best things you can do is to do things for others. This is one way to really get onto the spiritual trail, on that track, by doing things for others, going into that giving mode. So we're trained, again, I'm going to use the term pop culture or sin culture, is that you got to do everything for yourself. Like crooners, they used to sing when I was a kid growing up, Sammy Davis Jr. and Frank Sinatra and all these guys, they were singing My Way, or whether I'm right or whether I'm wrong, I got to be me, I got to be free. That was the mood in the 60s, And I, even as a kid growing up, I thought, no, I don't think that's right. I don't think that's not what Jesus taught. That's not what the holy people talk about. They say, do for others first, you serve the community, and because you're part of that community.
I think, Hare Krishna Maharaj, you.
Disenfranchised from everyone else. You will feel a disconnect with the world because you were just into yourself, and you're not thinking about others. So I think that's the way to look at it. It's more about we instead of me. There's a famous play that was written that went on Broadway, and they turned it into a movie called A Member of the Family. It's really well done. And the we and me, the main character, Frankie Suck, the we and me. So anyways, there's we and me. Okay, so me is just where I'm standing alone. And we're talking about we, it refers more to, you and you and you and you and me, So let's think about that way, going thing that way. And the song, when the saints go marching in, oh, when the saints go marching, oh, I want to be in that number. Oh, when the saints go marching in. So are we interested in our own salvation, our own moksha? Or is it possible that we can all go together? That might sound a little lovey-dovey, airy-fairy, whatever you want to call it. But we actually all hold hands together and we all move up to, to go back to our original place, the Paramdhamma, the spiritual world. It's just, the thought is so much better. It's more inclusive, and it's not inclusive. Krishna is all about inclusiveness. He never stands alone. He has a calf next to him. He has a deer. He has devotees all around him. It's everybody, the universe. The birds are there. He wants, we're all together. We're all happy. Not just a solitary person doing yoga, sitting alone in space in what they call Brahmajyoti. That's not our goal. Our goal is to be with others and to serve others. It's not self-serve. We have to get beyond that self-serve. I hope that helps out. Okay, do we have anybody else? Otherwise, we'll go back to Pitambar, and it's just Vaishnava or Sachinanand, or you tell me when to.
Thank you so much, Maharaj.
1 second, Pitam. Maharaj, you can take a few more questions. It's
Okay. Yeah, you're the host. So
if you have the time,
can we?
I
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay. We have another class later on, but
okay.
I'm doing okay now. So Pitambar, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Maharaj, for allowing me for the second question. So, Maharaj, I fully agree with Surendra Prabhu, who just said that, you know, he's struggling, or rather, we are struggling to gain control over our mind. And the same situation is with me, Maharaj. I try, but then miserably fail. Let me admit, we miserably fail to gain control over the mind. Now,
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. You're normal.
Maharaj,
You're
this is the
normal.
plight. This is the plight of mind. So I must admit that miserably fail to gain control over the mind, which is very, very flickering. Now, Maharaj, my question. Sorry, Maharaj, continue.
Can I just interject? I'll just say,
Sure.
no, you're not miserably failing. If you're miserably failing, then you wouldn't be on this call. If you're miserably failing, you would go and be out with a prostitute right now. You'd be taking drugs and drinking, and you'll be spending time at the casino, right?
Thank you so much. That's very true,
If you
Maharaj.
follow your mind, because that's where the mind will go. But you've got enough intelligence in you that, you know, it's kind of like a push and pull. Like when I was in the park earlier on, I was seeing the robins. The robins are out now. They're in the month of May, right? And by the way, the dandelions are coming out like blossoming like anything. So there was this one dandelion. There was this one robin, and I saw him. He was picking away with this pointed beak, you know, and he pulled out a worm, and it was almost bigger than the bird itself. So he flew away from that. And then another robin nearby was picking at a worm, and he was pulling it. The worm doesn't want to. The worm wants to stay in the ground, in the dirt, you know, but the robin had to go this. It was a little bit of a jerky sensation till finally it swallowed it, you know. So, you know, it's a wrestling that you're going through like anybody else, a wrestling with the mind and the intelligence. Okay. And the point is, it's not that some of us are born with God-given intelligence, but we have to align also our intelligence with the Shastra, you know, which will bring us to an even greater platform than just being practical, because the mind will be practical. I'm sorry, the intelligence will be practical, the mind will not, right? So we have to get even beyond practicality, and that is to get into prema, into a loving situation.
Yes.
Sorry, I interjected, but you had.
No.
We have Kavita. We have to go back. We have to be fair. Kavita,
Yes.
go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Maharaj. Thank you so much. So, Maharaj, my question was on 2.60, you know, Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, verse number 60, 60. Yes. And Bhagavad Gita 2.60 says, you know, that the senses, in fact, Krishna is addressing to Arjuna, the senses are so strong and impetuous, Arjuna, that they forcibly carry away the mind, even of a man of discrimination who is endeavoring to control them. And yes, that brings me to a question, Maharaj, that I would speak of myself that, okay, I'm trying to take baby steps into the spiritual realm where we try to become little sadhakas, try to know little from here, and then try to implement in whatever baby steps we can in our life. But Maharaj, the senses, in fact, Krishna confirms, are so strong and impetuous that even a man of discrimination would find it hard to control his mind, because the senses are kind of pushing them from behind. So the mind would be carried away even to that person. And in that discrimination, I would say Vishwamitra Muni, he also got completely carried away by the mind because he focused on the ankle bell of Menaka, just as an example. But in our practical life, this happens more often. So Maharaj, how do we, our person is that miserable that we have got that senses given by God, and we have got mind also as a sixth sense, you rightly said, but then we have got intelligence above the mind. How do we, Maharaj, come out of this grip or the trap of senses to forcibly carry away the mind?
Look at chapter 4 from Bhagavad Gita. Look at text 10. Okay. Now, the verse that you quoted, 260, might come across like it's hopeless. What's the point, right? I might as well put a pistol to my head and, you know. But here, look at chapter 4. It's 2 chapters later. Text 10. Vita raga bhaya krodha munmaya mam upastrita bahavo jnana tapasa puta madbhavam agata. And the translation to that is being freed from attachment, fear, and anger, being fully absorbed in me, and taking refuge in me. Many, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attained transcendental love for me. So the solution is in being absorbed in Krishna and taking shelter of him. And then you will get freed from this vita raga bhaya krodha, the lust, the anger, the greed, the attachment, etc. So it means get down on your knees. Boy George wrote a song, bow down, mister. Okay. So the point is that you bow down, you take a humble position, and you have to get into a crying mood sometimes. My Lord, I feel so helpless. I'm weak, you are strong. And Arjun felt that way. He went on his knees. He dropped his bow. And he did the most honorable things. I'm weak, my Lord, help me. And Krishna was smiling. Oh, great. Now we can get started. So it's that spirit of surrender that's necessary. And most of us were habituated to surrendering to the Vishayan, objects of sense gratification. And okay, so most of us have done this before. Okay, whether it's eating or some other kind of sensation, you do it for a while. Oh God, this is so boring now. Let me switch to something else. So you have to, okay, you can use that technique. Saturate yourself with the madness of it all. But if we're a little bit smart, we'll say, no, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to get entangled. I'm just not going to go there. Just like a man or a woman has multiple relationships going on. That's quite common now. The average kid in university in North America, these are these statistics, before they graduate, they've had 38, they even got 38 sexual relationships in school. So talk about, trying different things out and not, let's say anchoring down to be responsible. That's the kind of world in which we live. The average boy and girl. Can you imagine? Hare Krishna. That's where it's going.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Maharaj. That's wonderful answer. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
And Kavita, you had another?
Yes.
You're okay.
I really don't know how this put this across to you. See, I myself came into in contact with this great Iskcon pretty much late in life, but now for several years now, like there is environment of Krishna consciousness as much as possible in my house, but I have two boys, mid-30s. They don't stop me from having satsangs. They will make preparations for satsangs and everything. If I want to go to the temple, they will drop me at the temple, but they don't want to come inside. And I'm not pushing them or something, but I try to tell them a little bit, whenever there is a chance, I take that opportunity and try to tell them that, first thing in the morning, thanks Krishna, or before taking your meal, and all. That's just little things. So they are not at all into, not at all.
Mm-hmm.
So, and when they were kids and all, we were still, our family was like, we used to go to temples, we used to go to other pilgrimages too. But now for past like 1 decade or something, we are like, I have connected myself to Krishna consciousness, which is slightly different than our other visiting pilgrimages and other temples and all. So they are very good boys. The best thing is, very good boys. They are on their own. They studied on their own. They are doing their job. They are on their feet on their own. But is this mindlessness, or what?
Well,
What would we call it?
I would say it's a mix of both. The fact that they're serving you and they're giving you a ride to the temple and they respect your devotions is being very mindful, you know. And when people mature in their years, they have incredible expectations of the two gens under them, generations, and we call it the generation gap. And as we get more spiritual, more, let's say, immersed in spiritual thoughts and wishes and desires, they tend to be in another world themselves. I wouldn't be surprised if your very good boys start to gravitate a little bit more towards mindfulness as they age, as their physical bodies will not be as, like say, vivacious. They will also come to some point of spirituality. But here is the problem. We bring these kids into the world. It's the pop culture, which has nothing to do with spirit. It does not encourage spirituality whatsoever. I mean, I understand there's some hip hop artists that are quite spiritual. The original music, when it came out, it was quite sort of revolutionary, radical, and spiritual. But it has become so grungy, as of late, and that's kind of where things are going. It sounds to me like your boys are very much like they're Sattvic boys in the mode of goodness. So I would say, thank God for that. And, you know, one piece of advice, I would not try to push them, like, here's the Gita, you better, or you'll go to hell, or you'll go to Kumbhipaka. That technique never works.
No.
But, if you can show, the reason why, if you're offering your food at home to your picture of Krishna, then he said, the reason why this food is nice, boys, is because I offered it to Krishna. Just give little gestures of bhakti here and there. And I think that your boys are good at absorbing, it sounds to me like that. And I think it'll kick in one day. That's my wish, anyways. Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Vaishnava Prabhu, do you have anything you'd like to say? I always love to hear your voice. By the way, I went through some old pictures. I've got pictures of you from 30 years ago.
Krishna.
You changed just a little bit.
It's a good topic. Manoj, thank you for the nice consideration for the mindfulness and mindlessness. I was just feeling that the mind was getting a bad rap throughout this conversation.
Yeah.
Like he was a bad guy, the enemy, and it's sort of put down like that kind of thing. But my point is that the mind is an asset. It's like anything else. You have eyes, ears, nose, legs, etc. It's just another asset. And there are people doing good things out there in the world. And I think it's partly due to the mind. As you said, there was a lady that you met, many ladies on several occasions during your walk.
Me meeting many ladies? Oh, that doesn't.
I mean, here and there on your walk. And you mentioned that they had such a kind attitude or behavior or personal,
Yes.
And I'm sure that comes from the mind itself. So I feel the mind, as you said, is can go both ways. So
Yes.
I don't think it should get such a bad rap. We all here in Krishna consciousness because of the mind itself. It made a contribution in some way to our spiritual advancement. So that's one thing. The other thing, Kavita Mati asked a question, what does mindfulness exactly mean? Now, this class is presented by Your Holiness Bhaktimaraga Swami, and the slant is on the use of spirituality to fill the mind and make it mindful of Krishna. But that could mean something else to another lecturer in another academy, in some space academy, in some medical academy. And he may say, you should be mindful of all the medication. You should be mindful of the distance between here and the sun. So that mindfulness could mean different things to different people. But in this particular class today, the emphasis on mindfulness being totally dedicated and filled up with Krishna consciousness.
Right.
You know, so I would think, I would get that there from that particular thing.
Well, I'm a Swami. That's my title. So
Yes.
I represent a tradition from the Gita, Bhagavad Gita. So that's my reference point. And the Bhagavad Gita is all about getting spiritual. So I can't divert from that. And I just like if you don't have a spiritual, if you become an existentialist, somebody like that, like you don't really believe in anything. Some of the most outstanding existentialists, they just ended up committing suicide because they didn't have a drive. They didn't feel life as a purpose. So when you have Krishna in your life, you feel, here's the loving God, the God of love, and I have some reason to live. He can be my best friend, and so this is we cannot avoid talking about him.
Yes.
Other commentators on Bhagavad Gita, they'll take a sort of Mayavad slant. They can skew some idea, but you can't really get away with it as Krishna's talking and said, "Love me," to Arjuna, kind of as I love you. Let us love each other, not a sensual way, but let us love each other as spirits, and let's serve each other. And it's another plateau. It's it's otherworldly for sure. Otherworldly, not this worldly. So I find one of the defects of the capitalistic world, consumer world in which we live. You can talk about anything. You can talk about your love life, how many exploitations you want, but don't talk about spirituality. Shh, don't talk about religion. To God, no, 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 no. There isn't one. There isn't one. And just like yesterday, I was walking through Ramsden Park here, and I was sitting on the bench, and it was now becoming dark, and there was still some rummaging going on in at the tennis court, right, which was right next to my park bench, and says, oh, there's still some people out there. Okay. And then it ended up, they were walking past me. It was a woman, and then I guess their husband or a couple. And it became obvious to me they were carrying like tennis balls and rackets, and that they were kind of like the maintenance people. And I said, so you assume that, oh, everything goes on automatically. The tennis court was just, the fence was up. It was just there. It happened. No, but somebody did the work. So when it comes to this vast world of beauty, and like you look at Niagara Falls, oh, it just was there. It just happened. I mean, somebody's managing it. Somebody caused it to happen. Somebody caused a glacier to come through, or whatever it was, and there's some intelligence behind it. So I think what let's say current contemporary students of the world are not encouraged to go that far. They don't want to go that far. They just want to say it's just nature. It's just nature. Okay, but You've got a nature, and your friend has a nature, and that came from Mother Nature. Won't you say it's from Mother Nature? So what about this nature here? Maybe there's a father behind it, right? Things begin with the dad, and then it goes to the mom, and then you have a mom and a dad. Anyways, Prabhupada always encouraged us to probe, penetrate, probe, just go deeper, deeper, deeper.
Thank
And
you.
then, so you can surrender to the speculations that are out there. Oh, there were chemicals. There's a Big Bang theory. Now they have a new theory. Scientists always changing, always changing. Well, thank you. Anybody else? Satchidanand Prabhu.
Maharaj, thank you. It was wonderful. The discussions were also very helpful, practical suggestions and very nice questions. And just one thing that
Well,
you
thank you.
highlight is instructing the mind. Like we have the famous
Yes, good questions. I appreciate that very much.
Bhajaho Remana, like Prabhupada
Go ahead.
says. He starts with first Govindas is instructing his mind. Oh my dear mind. So it was very nice, Maharaj. Thank you very much. So is there anybody else who would like to ask Maharaj something before we take the next quick short announcements, followed by a closing kirtan by Venkat Prabhu and his good wife Mataji Snigdha Radhika Mata. So thank you, Maharaj, again for coming over to Iskcon Niagara. Please bless us with your association again and again. Three announcements this week in particular. Tomorrow, Sunday, the 2nd of May, is the disappearance of Srila Abhiram Thakur. So, Srila Abhiram Thakur was a very exalted Vaishnava, and he is one of the associations of Lord Nityananda. And something very unique about this Vaishnava Acharya, he carried a whip. Seriously, he carried a whip, and he would actually, and the whip's name is also given in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is called Jai Mangal. So whenever he hit somebody with that whip, it would always create some auspiciousness in that Vaishnava's life. So out of compassion, he would, simply, touch somebody with that whip. So we pray that Srila Abhiram Thakur, another wonderful feature about Abhiram Thakurji was that whenever he bowed down to a Shaligram Shila, nothing would happen. But if it was a false Shaligram Shila or a piece of rock, it would burst. Amazing. It would just burst. So that was his power. He was so much empowered. Wonderful personality. Srila Abhiram Thakur ki jai. Another great personality this week, middle of the week, is the disappearance of Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur. So Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur is the author of the famous Chaitanya Bhagavat. So there are three major biographies of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. One is Chaitanya Mangal by Lochan Das Thakur, Chaitanya Bhagavat by Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur, whose disappearance is this Wednesday. And then there is Chaitanya Charitamrita by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Vrindavan Das Thakur, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami writes that he has taken a lot of inspiration from Vrindavan Das Thakur when he compiled the biography of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he addresses Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur as the Vyasdev of the Chaitanya biography. And actually he is an incarnation of Vyasdev himself, Ved Vyas. When he was still unborn, his mother Narayani, who was a niece of Srivasacharya, one of the Panchatattvas. We always chant the 5 holy names before we chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita, Gadadhar, Srivas. So Srivas Acharya, Mahaprabhu was very fond of him. Every night he used to perform nocturnal kirtans in Srivas Acharya's house. And the niece of Srivas Acharya was Narayani Devi. And she was the mother of Vrindavan Das Thakur. Very fortunate. And later on, she took shelter of Vasudev Dutt, who is the mother of Malini Devi, the wife of Vrindavan Das Thakur, of Srivas Acharya. And Vasudev Dutt was a very exalted Vaishnava, very compassionate, and he was raised. And later on, after Mahaprabhu left, Vrindavan Das Thakur actually took initiation from Nityananda Prabhu. And it is said that he was perhaps the last disciples of Nityananda Prabhu. So we beg for the mercy of such exalted Vaishnavas so that we can advance in our spiritual life. And then on Friday, the 7th of this month, is Ekadashi. It is known as the Varuthini Ekadashi. So please fast from beans and grains. It is best not to eat anything, nirjala, but if you cannot, then drink water. If you cannot eat fruits, drink milk. But if you cannot, at least do not eat beans and grains. Eat Ekadashi Prasadam and chant more. Make your life successful. Anything that we do on Ekadashi is multiplied much, much more than any other ordinary day. It is also known as Madhav Tithi. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Madhava Tithi, Bhakati Janani, Jatane Palana Kori. Madhav Tithi means a tithi or a date that is very, very conducive and very favorable to Krishna. Madhav Tithi. Krishna is also known as Madhav. Bhakati Janani. So it is the mother of devotion. Janani means mother. So Ekadashi should be followed very strictly for those who are seeking spiritual advancement. No beans and grains. That's the best policy. And then the next day is Dwadashi Paran, which is the 8th. And to break the Ekadashi fast, the timing calculated based on the Toronto calendar, the Vedic calendar, is from 6 a.m. to 7:53. So this time it is 6 a.m. to 7:53. Normally you break it with some grains. Best is to get some Jagannath Prasadam, the dry rice. Gaudiya Vaishnavas break it with their fast. But if you don't have it, even if you can take a little bit of, chapati or rice grains, you can break your fast with that. So thank you all very much for being a part of this Iskcon NIagara Saturday weekly program. We would love to hear your comments. We would love to hear from you about how you feel. And if there's anything we can do to improve the program, to improve the quality of the spiritual programs that we are attempting and trying to give everyone for everyone's benefit, please feel free. There's a chat box, or even during the question answer sessions, you can always make a comment that is beneficial to all. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivinoda Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ji ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki Jai. So now I would like to request Venkat Prabhu and Snigdha Radhika Mataji to unmute themselves. Before I do that, I'm going to mute everybody else, and then they will be requested to unmute, because just in case accidentally if somebody unmutes, then it can kind of, distract the kirtan. So Venkat Prabhu and Mataji, please, you can unmute yourself and conduct the closing kirtan. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, we can hear you. Thank you.
Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Janyavadi Paschatya Satarini Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna,
गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। जय प्रभुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर श्री श्रीमद डिवाइन ग्रेस अभय चरणारविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्री प्रभुपाद जी की नित्य लीला प्रविष्टोम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर डिवाइन ग्रेस श्री भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी ठाकुर जगत गुरु श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। ब्रह्म मध्व गौड़ीय संप्रदाय आचार्य गुरुवर की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। वृंदावन धाम की जय। मायापुर धाम की जय। पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। गंगा माई की जय। यमुना माई की जय। देवी की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। समावेद गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। समावेद गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Sri Prabhupada. Kali Pavan Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Gaur Premanande. Once again, thank you very much. We will see you same place, same time next week, next Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.